I have no idea how much your grandmother hated your grandfather. Y'all have no idea how much your grandmother hated your grandfather. If you knew about at least 10% or a quarter of the things that she went through with your grandfather, you would be shocked. You would be horrified. And you hear a lot of men, they say stuff like, man, women back in the day, man, they were more traditional. They were domesticated, man. They held it down. 7, 8, 9, 10 kids, man, they held it down. You want to know why they held it down? It's because they were held back. What if I told you your grandmother didn't want to have all those kids? She didn't want to have all those kids. She probably only wanted to have 2 or 3 at the max. But guess what? They could essay and grape their wives, and they couldn't do nothing about it.
Hey guys, hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So this video, it was a little bit hard to do. This morning I was scrolling on YouTube and came across this video that this lady put different clips together where they were interviewing a lot of women in their 80s who were married and did not have a good experience at all. Typically you hear things like, oh, I want my grandparents' marriage or, grandma's marriage or whatever because they were together for 50 years and all that stuff. You might want to be careful about saying that, because what is going on is that a lot of people sometimes think the grass is green on the other side because of what is said versus what actually happened. So sometimes you assume that, your grandparents or even your parents had an amazing marriage. But if you sit down with those people and actually talk to them and ask them, how were things really, you might be shocked at some of the things that come out of their mouth. As I was watching this little clips and the video clips that this lady put together, it was really disturbing. Because there's women all over the world that are really, really obsessed with marriage, and they put the marriage on a pedestal to the point where it's like the end goal. And if they don't have it, it feels like they're lacking or something's wrong. So while I'm a married person, I always make sure to focus on also having your own identity and being okay if things came down where you're not married. It's okay, because putting yourself in this thing where you put a marriage on a pedestal and this is what you're after, and if you don't get it, like, you just feel some kind of way, it's not good. Because if you watch some of these videos, you might rethink. Okay, so in the interviews, a lot of grandmas were talking, and a lot of them were saying that their experience was just not good. I have nothing against marriage because I am married, but I feel like if you're not married to the right person, it's really, really gonna take a toll on you mentally, physically, financially, and stuff like that. Okay, so be careful about putting marriage on a pedestal and chasing it, and being desperate about it, because sometimes it's just not what people think it is. Because people sometimes don't talk, you just don't know what their experience is. So be careful about going, oh, well, she's married, oh, she's so lucky. You don't know what somebody's dealing with and things like that. So in the interview, a lot of the women were saying how they feel trapped. A lot of them financially were not able to support themselves. So they were at the hands of their husbands or their partners, meaning that they provided, so they didn't have a choice but to put up with whatever came with that. Some experience, abuse. There's women that experience being raped. They said no, and the husband continued to have intimacy with them. I'm trying not to use the other word because, YouTube watches all that. There's women that felt like at any moment they could have easily, and even did, unalived some of their partners because they got tired of dealing with what the man was putting onto them and what they were dealing with. So as you watch this, I really just felt sad, because there was a time, where people thought that, oh, if you've lasted 20, 30 years, oh my gosh, that is awesome. But we need to really be concerned about the quality of marriage versus the quantity. The years and years doesn't matter. It's about the health of the actual marriage. This is something that we really need to pay attention to, instead of chasing after, oh, I want to be married for 10 years, 20 years. You want to be chasing after, you want a quality marriage, meaning that both partners are thriving, but communication is well. Nobody's feeling like they're being forced to do anything that they don't want to do. As far as, for example, when your partner says no, you push it. You're pushy about it. Intimacy, for example. A lot of women on this interview mentioned that they were being raped because that's how they ended up with 10 or 20 kids at a time. This was really disturbing to me, because as a woman, to constantly have kids, there was a lady that even got mad that her grandma or whatever had almost 10 kids, meaning that she was pregnant every year. It's very concerning to me. I have nothing against having a lot of kids, but I do know, even having one, if I felt the way I did, I can imagine having kids back to back and what that takes away from you. That's what people don't really talk about. It takes your energy, it takes your mental health changes every time you're having a child. And people can argue all day that they're fine, they're normal. That's good for you. But for me, from what I've experienced and how it's affected me, I know if I had kids back to back, I just would not be myself, because I've realized the exhaustion that you experience, the mental state. You're constantly giving. And when you're giving, you're not pouring into yourself. And that what that really means at the end of the day. You know, it's a lot. So for me, you can imagine if you're having 10 kids, like a kid every year, you're not getting a break. And a lot of women mentioned this. They were constantly having kids. And at the time, birth control was not even something that they had. So they didn't have a choice. You know, you had the church, for example, preaching things like, you know, be fruitful and multiply. And so the man felt that, oh, this means I'm just going to force you, even if you don't want to do it. The amount of times, you know, one of the ladies on there was talking about the safety of women, that women are not safe. And you are, especially if you are not you don't have a way to take care of yourself. If a man decides that they don't want to buy you food or get you food, they can starve you. They get to speak at the time that they were in. They were speaking against, it's like they had no say about themselves or about their bodies. And it really is disturbing, because when people my grandparents were, you know, together for 30 years. They put that on a pedestal, and there's something they chase after. I would recommend, you know, maybe if they're alive, have a conversation with them and ask them, how was marriage for them? How was relationships for them, really? Because at the end of the day, a lot of women just dealt with whatever because they didn't have a choice. Many of them were talking about how, kind of joking about, you thought that the pans that they bought were for cooking, but more of to hit their husbands upside the head with it anytime they acted up, because that was their way to protect themselves. There was women that were mentioning they had knives, you know, when they were cooking in the kitchen, to cut up somebody if the man became a certain way. So dealing with abuse, dealing with being raped, dealing with somebody who knows that you already have like a million kids, but they want to keep pushing it to have more and more back to back. And somebody was saying, one of the women said something about, if a man can keep you pregnant all the time, they got you, because you'll never have a chance to really focus on yourself. You're always going to be taking care of kids, cooking, cleaning. You don't have time to pour into yourself. And that is disturbing. A lot of women, you know, were talking about they didn't get to go to school and really focus on themselves because they were always pregnant. And also some of their husbands did not allow it. So at the times we're in, when I see people putting marriage on a pedestal, I have to go, hey, step back a little bit. Yes, healthy marriages should be on a pedestal. You know, having good partners should be on a pedestal. Quality of marriages should be on a pedestal. But we should not be putting marriage generally on a pedestal, because we don't know what people went through. And you have to be careful about chasing that. You really have to be careful about it, because there's just people that did not have a good experience with it. And some just did not get to come on the TV or, you know, go on social media to talk about it. So now watching this 80-year-old women talking about their experience, they look and they're like, no, I never want anybody to be involved with ever in my life, because of what they dealt with, the trauma that they're carrying around. And that trauma is actually passed down to generations. So sometimes you have to pay attention to your behaviors and realize, like, some of that stuff is passed down. You know, the way you feel towards certain men may be just because your family members, the girls in your family, dealt with certain things with men. You know, when you're having kids back to back and you really are not properly 100% there and you're not taking care of them, that could be a generational trauma that's passed down. So be careful about generational trauma that's going around when you think you're just doing whatever because you're doing it. Pay attention to that, because that's what one of the ladies talked about. Like, she literally went and talked to her grandma, and right now they're not even communicating because she was so upset at some of the stuff that she heard. She was so upset with the grandpa because she was like, literally, you made my grandma have like almost 10 kids by forcing her. And she was just breaking down, like, just done. She's like, and some women now don't even want marriage because of this stuff. So at the end of the day, my point of my video is, before you put marriage on a pedestal, maybe have a conversation with your grandmas and grandparents and see how their experience was. Not that I'm saying things are going to be the same, but there is generational trauma that can be passed down. So if you're having certain experiences in your marriages over and over, and family members are doing having the same thing. It could be a generational thing that's passed down, that you are also putting up with a lot of stuff that's just not good, or you're ending up in toxic marriages. Be careful about that. Okay? When you make it seem like your end goal has to be marriage, think about why that is. And to think, because you see other women are just having wonderful marriages and you think everything is all great. It might not be for you, and maybe it's not even meant for you. So in general, we have to be careful about saying things like, "Oh, well, my grandparents, were married for 50 years." Don't focus on that number. Focus on finding out if they're alive. Do they have a quality marriage? Were they happy? Were they thriving? Another thing that was brought up is a lot of men were marrying young girls because they were virgins and whatever. So this was literally like pretty much you're kind of raping at the end of the day, because you are taking somebody who's 15 and you're 31. We have a problem. So at the end of the day, it's almost like a certain society that was pushing to pretty much control women in some ways. Because once the man married you, some family members didn't know what the heck was going on with you. They think everything is all, green on the other side. They didn't know. So when women are speaking up right now in their 80s, I realize, like, dang, we have to be careful about putting marriage up here and just thinking that I want what the other person had, because you don't know what the heck they were dealing with.